Let's talk about deceptive headlines that can be written to achieve political goals. I hope that this segment is a good snapshot of how headlines can be used to distort and to influence and to push a particular narrative that may be interesting to one media outlet versus another. So what happened? Well, Joe Biden was recently asked during his current trip to Asia about Chinese aggression towards Taiwan. Now, that's a legitimate issue. We've talked about it on this program. Will China see the chaos of what's happening in Ukraine, thanks to the Russian invasion, as maybe an opening in which they could make a military move against Taiwan? So China, Taiwan, that's the issue. It's a real issue. It's a legitimate issue. President Joe Biden was asked about it, and Joe Biden confirmed if China invaded Taiwan, the U.S. would intervene. And that's been American policy for a long time. So let's look at the actual question and answer. This is the source material for the topic and the subsequent headlines we're going to look at.
You didn't want to get involved in the Ukraine conflict militarily for obvious reasons. Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes.
You are.
That's the commitment we made.
OK, so that's not news. There's nothing there that's actually newsworthy. There's something called the One China policy. You can agree with the One China policy or you can disagree with it. But the policy has been dating all the way back to 1979. It was first stated in 1972. The U.S. acknowledges that China on either side of the Taiwan Strait maintain there is but one China, and that Taiwan is a part of China. That's the United States position. Now, in 2016, Donald Trump said the U.S. isn't necessarily bound by the One China policy. And lots of people said, oh, my goodness, Trump is trying to change the One China policy. But then in a phone call in 2017 that Trump had with Xi Jinping, they talked about a number of different things. And Trump agreed at the request of President Xi to honor the One China policy. OK, so we have that. We also have the Taiwan Relations Act from 1979, and we have the 6 assurances, as they're called, that Reagan gave to Taiwan in 1982, which say that if Taiwan violates the principles the U.S. Believes in, or if China violates the principles that the U.S. believes in, the U.S. would help Taiwan to defend itself. If China were to invade, the United States would help Taiwan in that situation. So this has been policy for a really long time. So Biden is asked during the press conference, well, if China attacks, would the U.S. help defend Taiwan? And the United States president says, yes, that's the commitment we made. It's not news. Biden is essentially saying the stuff we've agreed to for the last 40 years, we're going to abide by it. That's it. That's the story. Check out how every News Corporation media outlet covered it. And by News Corp, we mean Fox, Fox Business, Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal titled their article, Biden says U.S. would intervene militarily if China invaded Taiwan. Fox News says U.S. military will defend Taiwan if it comes to that, Biden says. Fox Business segment says Biden says U.S. will intervene if China invades Taiwan. Now, again, it's not about these headlines being literally false. It's the fact that they're being written specifically to further the idea of Biden's out there looking for wars. Biden's out there looking for military conflict. And it was Trump who was keeping us out of wars. This has been the narrative. In the George W. Bush era, the right loved war. They loved spreading democracy and all of this different stuff. And then Trump came in and Trump said the Iraq war was a bad idea, even though previously Trump had said I would have gone into Iraq. Doesn't matter. Trump came in and said Iraq was bad, which is true. Just he's a hypocrite on it. And he said Hillary will get us into wars, but I won't. I'm going to keep us out of wars and get us out of more places. And then the claim made about Joe Biden was Biden's going to get us into wars. Biden's bloodthirsty. Biden's war hungry, even though there was no such evidence of that. And so they want to write headlines that will further that. And most of the Fox audience probably doesn't realize, most of the Wall Street Journal audience doesn't realize, the U.S. has previously said we would help to defend Taiwan in such a case. Biden's not treading new ground here. Biden's not changing policy. He's not announcing new policy. But the story that Fox wants to tell is here's Biden once again looking for military problems. So they'll say, look at Biden wanting to intervene. Look at Biden wanting to interject and inject the military. The truth is Biden's saying, I'm not changing the 40-year policy that we've had. Now, comparatively, Reuters had a more straightforward headline for this story. Reuters called it, "No change in U.S. policy towards Taiwan," says White House official. Now, it's not only Fox opting for the more salacious headlines. Most of them do it. CNN had a similar one, but it's at least more fair. CNN's headline was, "Biden says U.S. would respond militarily if China attacked Taiwan, but White House insists there's no policy change." And indeed, there isn't. So it's really important to understand how to research these things directly. If you were to Google one China policy, 6 assurances to Taiwan, U.S. relationship to China and Taiwan, you would realize there's not a newsworthy element here. Joe Biden is just saying, like, yeah, this is the policy and we're going to stick to the policy. The story is Biden doesn't unilaterally change anything when it comes to China and Taiwan. That doesn't really make for a very exciting headline. So that's the genesis, the oranges, for lack of a better term, of a bunch of these headlines, and hopefully instructive in understanding how these narratives can be woven.